Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Life of Sri Raghavendra Swamy. In the court of Sri Krishnadevaraya, the Vijayanagar Emperor, patrons of arts, poets and scholars, was a scholar named Krishna Bhattu. He had a son named Kanakachala Bhattu, whose son was Timmanna Bhattu. Timmanna Bhattu was not only famous as a scholar proficient in the Vedas and Shastras, but also as an accomplished player on the veena. His wife was a pious lady named Gopamba. The devout couple had a son and a daughter. According to the popular proverb that one eye is not an eye and one son is not a son, they desired to have another son. So they went on a pilgrimage to Tirupati. They worshipped Sri Venkateshwara with intense devotion and prayed for a son. Being gratified by the sincere devotion of the pious couple, Srinivasa appeared to them in a dream and told them that he was pleased to grant them a son who would serve as a shining example of the virtues of divine knowledge, devotion, and detachment, and would rise the world to heights of nobility. Timmanna Bhattu and Gopamba praised the Lord for his infinite kindness and returned to the native village of Bhuvanagiri. After the lapse of 9 months, Gopamba gave birth to a son on an auspicious day. His name was Venkatanatha, as he was born out of Venkateshwara's grace. The child grew up into a graceful boy endowed with intelligence and smartness. He was put to school on attaining the age of 5. A few days later, Timmanna took ill and breathed his last. The responsibility of educating Venkatanatha fell on Guru Raja, the elder son of Timmanna. He found much difficulty in maintaining his family. At the age of 8, he performed Venkatanatha's Upanayam, that is sacred thrit ceremony, with the help of donation received from rich people. Then he sent Venkatanatha to his brother-in-law, Sri Lakshmi Narasimhacharya, for further education. Sri Lakshmi Narasimhacharya felt it not only easy but a pleasure to teach his new ward, as the latter was quick to learn in a very short time. The boy acquired mastery over the Vedas, the 6 Shastras and the 8 Puranas, and became unrivaled in scholarship. Venkatanatha was married to a young, beautiful and virtuous girl named Saraswati at the proper age. Generally, education ends with marriage, but it was not so in case of Venkatanatha. At that time, the pontiff seat at Kumbakonam was endowed by Sri Sudhindra Tirtharu, who was trained by famous Sri Vijayendra Tirtha Swamiji. Sri Sudhindra was proficient in traditionally 64 arts, and he taught many pupils beside propagating the Dvaita ideas. Venkatanatha desired to go to him and receive lessons in philosophy. Accordingly, taking his elder brother's permission, he went to Sri Sudhindra, prostrated before him, and stood at a distance in great humility. The Swami asked him who he was. Venkatanatha replied that he was Venkanna, son of the Veena scholar Timmanna, and expressed a desire to receive instructions from the Swami in Sri Sudha. Sri Sudhindra was pleased with him, and he not only agreed to teach him but also permitted him to reside in the mutt and receive tirtha and prasadas. Venkanna studied the lessons on the Sudha with earnestness and learned them by heart every day. He would get difficult portions explained by his teacher. The teacher was deeply impressed by the pupil's devotion and faith and began to look upon him with affection. This roused the jealousy of other pupils who planned to bring forth the teacher's worth on Venkatanatha. One day, the jealous classmates went to Sri Sudhindra without the knowledge of Venkanna. They said, "Oh, preceptor, the newcomer Venkanna is not studying his lessons well. He is always sleepy and indulging in unbecoming actions. It is a waste to feed and teach such a pupil. He is unfit to reside in mud. So we request you to drive him out. They uttered many lies to strengthen their argument. The Swamiji heard them and replied, "Do not worry, I shall inquire about him and set him right. You had better go away." After a while, all the pupils came to learn their lessons. Sri Sudhindra commenced teaching, but having some doubt in explaining a portion, he told the pupils to come next day and said he would explain it to them. Venkana was in the habit of listening to the lessons on Sri Sudha with concentration and noting the explanations in a notebook. At night, before going to sleep, as usual, he noted down correctly what he had learned that day and went to sleep. As usual, after a short time, Sri Sudhindra came to see him. Venkana was in deep sleep. There were some palimara leaves with writing on them, that is Talegere. The teacher took up and observed them. Venkana was writing a regular annotation for Sri Sudha entitled Parimalam. He referred to the explanation for the statement about the meaning of which he had some doubt. Venkana had explained it clearly and beyond any doubt. The teacher read it and his doubt was cleared fully. He felt happy to realize that Venkatanatha's scholarship and ability was unrivaled. Just then, Venkana was shivering with cold as he had no blanket to cover himself with. Seeing this, Sri Sudhindra wrapped his own upper garment on the sleeping pupil, took the palimara leaves and went away. Venkana got up from sleep early in the morning. He was grieved at the disappearance of the manuscripts he had by his bedside. He was afraid of his teacher's wrath. He feared what punishment might befall him. He was at a loss to know how to convince his teacher of his innocence. Hoping for divine grace to get out of the trouble, he finished his bath and other activities, approached the Swamiji, prostrated himself before him and said, "O Guru, someone covered my body with this cloth while I was asleep last night. My manuscripts are missing. I do not know who took them. I am not to blame. Forgive me." Sri Sudhindra replied, "Do not worry. It is time to begin that lesson. Let's go." On seeing the other pupils, the Swamiji said, "Venkana is not an ordinary person. He is a genius and a man of virtue. He is writing an annotation every night and what he has learnt during the day. Yesterday, I had to dismiss the class as I could not find the correct explanation for a sentence. But last night, Venkana wrote the correct explanation for it in his book. You also had better listen to it." So saying, he read out the explanation given by Venkana in his book. All the pupils were astonished. Sri Sudhindra paid an encomium to the proficiency and skill of Venkana and awarded him the title of Parimalacharya, as he had written the commentary of Parimala on the teachings of Sri Sudha. Ever since, the other pupil showed Venkana great respect and regarded the Swami's affection for him increased more than before. After some days, Sri Sudhindra started on a pilgrimage. Followed by his pupils, he visited various cities and villages and accepted the gifts and offerings given by the devotees and blessed them. In this manner, they reached Madurai in the south. In that city was a Tamil sannyasi who was well versed in grammar and was called Vaikarani. He was proud that no one could equal him in his knowledge of grammar. He wished to enter into a disputation on grammar with Sri Sudhindra, but the Swami said to him, "First, you had better engage yourself in a dispute with my student Venkatanatha. If you defeat him, you can contest with me." The sannyasi agreed and commenced a disputation with Venkatanatha on Mahabhashya. Venkatanatha was an adept in argumentation on all Shastras, so he easily countered every one of the sannyasi's arguments by his prowess and won over him finally. The Tamil sannyasi accepted defeat gracefully. Everyone was struck with wonder on seeing the dexterity with which Venkatanatha had demolished every one of the arguments preferred by the Tamil sannyasi. Sri Sudhindra Swamy was all admiration for his pupil's excellence at argumentation. He at once blessed Venkatanatha by conferring on him the title Mahabhashacharya. At that time, Raghunath Rao was the ruler of Tanjore. He was highly proficient in music and literature. He could appreciate and enjoy the nuances of poetry. He sent an invitation to Sri Sudhindra to visit his city. The Swami accepted the invitation and paid a visit to Tanjore. The ruler showed the Swami great respect and requested him to spend a few days in Tanjore. The Swami agreed to do so. Raghunath Rao had a minister by named Govinda Dikshita. The latter had a son named Yagnanarayana Dikshita, who was well versed in the Advaita philosophy and who had acquired much fame. He expressed to Sri Sudhindra his desire to engage in a disputation with Sri Sudhindra and his pupil Venkatanatha on the comparative merits of Dvaita and Advaita. Sri Sudhindra agreed gladly and asked him first to contest with Venkatanatha. Venkatanatha and Yagnanarayana Dikshit made arguments and counter-arguments to prove the respective viewpoints. Very many distinguished scholars watched them carefully. Both interpreted Tattvamasi and Aham Brahmasmi as propounded by the Shastras. Both being great scholars, advanced arguments in a distinguished manner so as to amaze the listeners. The disputation between the two stalwarts went on for 18 days. On the 19th day, Venkatanatha established beyond doubt that Dvaitism was the correct one. He vanquished his rivals thoroughly, and the latter also conceded the victory. In appreciation of Venkatanatha's supremacy in argumentation, Sri Sudhindra conferred on him the title Bhattacharya. Ever since, he addressed Venkatanatha as Venkatabhatta. Out of boundless affection, he appointed Venkatanatha as a poet laureate in the Mutt. After completing his studies and training in Tarka and Vedanta under the tutelage of Sri Sudhindra, Venkatanatha returned to his native village of Bhuvanagiri. He enjoyed the pleasure of family life in the pleasing company of his wife Saraswati. The pious couple had a son. As Venkanna had suffered from poverty since his boyhood, he named the child Lakshmi Narayana in the hope that he may not have to suffer from the same. It was universally known that Venkatanatha was a great scholar. Disciples from various parts of the land came to receive education at his hands. In those days, the prevailing customs was for the teacher to feed his pupils free of charge. Venkatanatha had to bear the burden of feeding his pupil in addition to maintaining his family. He was from birth poor. How could he shoulder the burdens? It was beyond his power to meet the expenses day after day. At this time, Venkatanatha came to know that a rich man in a neighboring village was celebrating a happy event. His wife Saraswati said to him, "Please attend the auspicious function in the rich man's house. He will honor you as a great scholar and give you some money." Venkanna accepted the advice and started for the village. Hundreds of Brahmins had come to the rich man's house to partake of the feast. Venkatabhatta sat in the corner of the rich man's house and was reciting some verses of prayers. The family priest of the rich man was a greedy and thoughtless person. It was his duty to prepare the sandal paste and distribute it among the Brahmins. But as he was busy, he ordered Venkatabhatta, who was reciting the verse in a corner, to grind the sandal paste and went away. Taking it as a divine ordainment, Venkatanatha prepared the sandal paste and gave it to the priest. The priest distributed it among the Brahmins who had come for the feast. They applied the sandal paste to their bodies. No sooner had they done so, they began to feel a burning sensation all over their body. The rich man inquired of the priest how he had made the paste and why it was creating the burning sensation. The priest pleaded ignorance and showed Venkatanatha Venkatanatha was the person responsible for grinding the paste. The rich man inquired of Venkatanatha the reason for the curious occurrence. Venkatanatha calmly replied, I was reciting Agni Sukta while grinding the paste. Perhaps that made the sandal paste give out a burning effect. He later recited Karana Sukta and ground a fresh paste which was distributed to the Brahmins. When the Brahmins used it over the bodies, they got over the burning sensations and felt the paste very cool and pleasing. The rich man realized the divine power of greatness of Venkatanatha. He treated Venkatanatha to a rich feast and gave him a reward of 100 rupees. Venkatabatta returned to the village and the amount of 100 was spent in a few days. It was miserable for Venkatabatta to meet the demands of his family. To make matter worse, some thieves broke into his house one night and got away with a few things he had. According to the saying, perhaps God divested Venkatanatha of the remnants of his belongings to make him fit to earn his grace and acquire greatness in life at a future date. Venkatanatha became disconsolate with grief and unable to find a way out of his misery, started for his guru's abode with the members of his family. He prostrated before Sri Sudhindra and poured out his tale of woe. He wept in grief and sought his guru's protection. The Swami had great regard for Venkatanatha's scholarly attainments and affection for his qualities of virtue. So he assured Venkatanatha of help, desired him to live with his family in the mutt itself, and spoke to him words of comfort. Ever since, Venkatanatha had lived in the mutt along with his wife and children. Venkatabatta earned the esteem and affection of all people by teaching pupils who came to him for learning and taking part in scholarly conferences. After a few days, the health of Sri Sudhindra received a setback. So he said to Venkatanatha, You are a great scholar endowed with much ability. Give up the lure of family pleasures. Take up sannyasa and serve the world at large. On hearing these words, Venkatabhatta said, O Guru, I bow to your decision, but I cannot leave my young wife and son to their fate. I am not yet ready to take up sannyasa. Kindly forgive me. Sri Sudhindra considered his pupil's words as wise. As his health was declining, he made another disciple accept sannyasa and gave him the name of Yadavendra Tirtha. Some days later, Sudhindra regained normal health. He attended to his daily duties of offering and worship to Sri Moola Ramachandra and teaching his pupils religious doctrines. He retained with him the image of Sri Moola Ramachandra and certain others and sent Yadavendra Tirtha to tour the country. Still later, once Sri Sudhindra once again fell ill. The worship of Sri Moola Ramachandra, the presiding deity of the mutt, was hampered. As he was pondering over this one night, Lord Sri Ramachandra appeared to him in a vision and said, Venkatabhatta is fit to carry on the worship. He is ready to take up sannyasa now. Send for him and make the necessary arrangements. Do not feel sad. He instantly disappeared. Sri Sudhindra repeated these words many times and felt happy. He decided to send for Venkatabhatta. Strangely enough, Venkatabhatta had a dream the same night when Sri Sudhindra had the vision of God. Sri Sharada Devi, goddess of learning, appeared before him and said, You are a great scholar of much competence. The world needs to be uplifted by you. The Madhva philosophy has to be propagated still wider. Give up your family ties and take sannyasa. Sri Moola Ramachandra is waiting to be worshipped by you. Wake up. So saying, she disappeared. Venkatabhatta awoke from the sleep and was happy and surprised to think of what had happened. He immediately proceeded to the place of Sri Sudhindra and fell prostrate before him. The Swami was overjoyed to see him. They related to each other the event relating to their respective dreams. Venkatabhatta told his guru that he wished to perform the Upanayan of his son, Lakshmi Narayana, and proceeded home after receiving monetary assistance for the purpose. Reaching his village Bhuvanagiri and collecting his relations and friends, returned to the Swami's place. He performed his son's Upanayan in the presence of Sri Sudhindra and with the blessings. Later he returned to Bhuvanagiri. Few days later, he called his wife Saraswati and said to her, "You are managing the family as an obedient wife and making me happy. You are a honest woman. But worldly life is like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. It is not everlasting. Do not love me anymore. I intend to take up sannyasa in obedience to my Guru's command. Do not feel grieved. Carry on your life with calmness of mind." She was pained to hear her husband's words, but Venkatabhatta consoled and comforted her by his sweet words. Having determined to take up sannyasa, Venkatabhatta went to Sri Sudhindra. He accompanied his Guru on tour from Kumbakonam to Tanjavur. The ruler Raghunath Rao had arranged a grand reception for the Swami there. Sri Sudhindra told Raghunath Rao about his decision to initiate Venkatabhatta into sannyasa. The ruler made suitable arrangements for the occasion. In the year Rudirogari of Shalivana era 1845, Sri Sudhindra gave sannyasa to Venkatabhatta according to the Shastric rites. He gave Venkatabhatta the title of Sri Raghavendra Tirtha. Many scholars, poets, devotees, and common people were present on the great occasion. The program was gone through with great pomp and glory. Raghunath Rao showed his esteem for both the sannyasis, swamis, and received their blessings. The news of Sri Venkatanatha's initiation into sannyasa reached Saraswati's ears. She was filled with agony. What a pity that she could not look upon her husband's face any longer. She hated to live further without the support of her husband. With these feelings gnawing at her heart and abandoning wisdom, she ended her life by falling into a well. As a result of committing suicide, she became a ghost. In that form, she went to Sri Raghavendra Tirtha and wept bitterly. Taking pity on her, he repeated sacred mantra and showered on her some drops of water. She was relieved of her ghost form and gained redemption from life. Ever since, it became a family custom for the descendants of Venkatabhatta to perform Saraswati Puja at the commencement of auspicious functions in their houses. Sri Raghavendra Tirtha started on his religious tours. Wherever he went, large number of devotees received him with great respect, offered Pada Puja to him, and received his blessings in great joy. During his travels, he once visited a village called Kandenati, went to the house of a poor boy named Venkanna and asked him to do bhiksha for him, that is, feed him. The boy believed that the Swami had come to his house for bhiksha in preference to the rich people's houses only to bless him. So he went to the rich people, took their assistance, and also invited them to worship the Swami. He gave a grand reception to the Swami in this manner and earned his grace and blessings. While taking leave of the boy and starting for another village, the Swami asked the boy to remember him in times of difficulties. At that time, Siddhi Masood Khan was Nawab of Adoni. Though illiterate, became a ruler through good fortune. One day, when he rested under a tree, and after taking part in vigorous hunt, a servant gave him a letter, saluted to him, and stood at a distance. The Nawab opened the letter, but being illiterate could not understand its content. He looked about in the forest for anyone who could read it. Just then he saw the poor boy Venkanna, gathering wood for fuel. Immediately he ordered the servant to bring that boy. In fact, Venkanna also could not read. He confessed to Nawab, "I am a poor Brahmin boy. I have not received any education and hence cannot read the letter." The Nawab retorted, "Being a Brahmin, can't you read? I cannot believe your words. Will you read it or shall I sever your head?" He threatened the boy in these words. Recalling Sri Raghavendra Swamy's advice, he said to himself, "O Sri Raghavendra, protect me from danger." By Raghavendra's grace, he was able to make out what was written in the letter. He said to the Nawab boldly, "O king, your army has won in the battle. This is a message of your victory." Thereupon, the Nawab took kindly to him, took him to the palace, gave him money and said, "Get better education. Still, I shall give you a job in my administration." The poor Venkanna agreed to do so. In 2 or 3 years, Venkanna reached good education. He became an official in Nawab's administration, discharged his duties well, and soon won the goodwill and appreciation of the Nawab. In course of time, the Nawab recognized his intelligence and administrative ability, made him Diwan of his state. In this way, the poor boy Venkanna rose to a high position in life by the grace of Sri Raghavendra Swamy. Once, Sri Raghavendra Swamy was touring in the Maharashtra region. One of the servants of the mutt came to him and said, "O Swamy, I wish to get married. Kindly give me a month's salary in advance." The Swamy was then washing his hands and feet with earth. He said, Where is money with me? I have only this loose earth in my hands. If you want, take it." The servant, who knew of great powers of the Swamy, said in great confidence, "O Swamy, even the dust that comes from your hand will be 10,000 rupees for me. So give me the dust alone." The Swamy gave him a handful of the earth, blessed him, and sent him away. As the servant went past some villages, it fell dark. He went to one hamlet and laid himself down on pile for the night's rest. The owner of the house was suffering from some agony. Every time his wife gave birth to a child, a ghost would appear and destroy the child. The ghost had come then, ready to kill the child to be born. But the earth in the servant's palm was shining with brilliance and did not allow the ghost to enter the house. The ghost awoke the servant and said to him, "Cast the shining stuff away. It does not allow me to enter the house. I shall give you whatever you wish for." The servant was surprised at his words. He understood that the mysterious power of the earth in his hand did not allow the ghost to enter the house. At once he said to the ghost, "If you get me a vessel full of rupees, I shall keep the earth at a distance and let you in." In a few seconds, the ghost brought to the Swamy's servants a vessel full of rupees. He took the vessel and, out of pity for the ghost, thought of the Guru and spilled a portion of the earth on the ghost. At once, the ghost was relieved of his ghostly form. The master of the house and the members of his family who observed all this from inside were filled with astonishment. They felt happy that the danger of the ghost which afflicted them was no more there. In the meanwhile, the master's wife delivered a male child and the child was safe and sound. Then the house owner had a desire to give his brother's daughter in marriage to the Guru's servants. He called the servant in, treated him with much respect, and expressed his heart's desire to him. The servant gave his consent, and the girl's marriage with him was celebrated immediately. The Guru's servant returned happily with his wife to the presence of Guru. He prostrated himself and told his master the entire story. He placed at his Guru's feet the treasure he had secured and begged him to take it. But the Swamy wouldn't take it and said to him, "Why do I need this money? You yourself take it and be happy." He blessed the servant and sent him away. Sometime later, on one occasion, the Swamy visited the Gadag region. A gentleman devoted to the Guru named Desai Raghunath wished to play with him, the host, and took him to his house to the accompaniment of various forms of music. Being very rich, he had rich dishes of food prepared for the Swamy. He collected a huge vessel full of mango juice. The Swamy finished his bath and other rites and got ready to worship his deity, Sri Moola Ramachandra. Many high-caste Brahmins came to receive the tirtha and prasada. They witnessed the puja of Sri Moola Ramachandra. The Swami got ready to distribute the tirtha, that is sacred water used for bathing the deities. All the devotees were receiving the sacred water. Suddenly an insect fell in the water and denoted some impurity in the house. He called the house owner and said, "There is some impurity in your house. Try to find it out." As a search was made, it was realized that the house owner's infant had fallen into the vessel of mango juice and died. The rich Desai and his wife were filled with grief. They informed the Swami with sad hearts of what had happened. He asked them to bring the child to him. Unwilling to disobey the words of the Guru, they brought the child's dead body and placed it at the Guru's feet. Sri Raghavendra uttered mantra and split some water from his kamandala on the child's body. Sri Hari's power is indescribable. The boy woke as if from sleep and sat up. The devotees who witnessed this wonderful event were amazed. The Desai couple were happy beyond words. Desai praised the Swami for his greatness and gave him much money. He received the blessings of the Swami. The Brahmins who came for the feast ate merrily. The Swami went forward on his tour from Kiratagiri on his way to Tirupati. The Swami rested in a temple of Anjaneya. A Harijan came to the temple and bowed to the Swami from a distance. On seeing him, the Swami recollected his own previous birth as well as that of a Harijan. The Harijan was also known as Kanakadasa in his former life. The Swami asked of him, "Are you not yet rid of your karma?" The man replied, "No, Swami, I wish to end this life of mine. Be gracious enough to help me." The Swami said, "Bring any article of food for being offered to Sri Moolarama today. You will be freed from the bonds of this life." The Harijan went home and brought some mustard seeds, as he had nothing else at home. He offered it to the Swami in utter devotion. The Swami offered to cooks to use the mustard in the food to be prepared for the deity. But it was a period of Chaturmasya, and according to the rules of custom, mustard seed should not be used in food. So some scholars reminded the Swami of this ban. The Swami then replied, "O scholar, this Harijan was Kanakadasa in his previous birth, when I was Vyasarajakah in my former birth. It was he that helped me to have darshan of Sri Hari. In remembrance of this man, mustard seed should be used in our mat. There will be no blame for disobeying the Chaturmasya custom. Ever since, mustard is being used in Sri Raghavendra mat even in Chaturmasya days." The Harijan observed the worship of Sri Moolarama with his own eyes, received the sacred water and food, praised Sri Hari with all his heart and ended his life. He was redeemed from the cycle of birth, old age and death. In another Chaturmasya period, a scholar named Birudanahalli Srinivasacharya came to the Swami, prostrated himself and placed at his feet his works on philosophy and said, "I beg of you, Swami, to read them and give your opinion about them." Sri Raghavendra Tirtha examined the writings thoroughly. He observed that the books were written in good style and with great skill and intelligence. He felt much happy and awarded the scholar the title of Tirtha. That day, the Swami asked Sri Srinivasacharya to sit by his side at the time of dinner. The servant served him the pepper water prepared with mustard seed. Srinivasacharya declined to be served with it, as it was against the rule to partake of it in the Chaturmasya period. He was a disciple of the Uttarade Math. He felt that it was wrong to use mustard seed in cooking during Chaturmasya period. That was why he declined to take it in the meal. The Swami was observing all this. The meal was over. Srinivasacharya received fruits and sacred rice grains and went away. That is Mantrakshiti. He went to Yadavendra Tirtha, his guru, and related to him what had happened in Sri Raghavendra Math. When he untied the packet of the sacred grain, he found that they had all turned black. In the meantime, he began to feel pain in his stomach. His face became pale. On seeing all this, Sri Yadavendra said to Srinivasacharya, "You have done some act derogatory to Sri Raghavendra Swamy. That is why you are suffering from the stomachache. Your face is lacking luster, and the sacred grain had turned black. Go at once to Sri Raghavendra and obtain his forgiveness. Srinivasacharyalu immediately proceeded to Sri Raghavendra Tirtha, prostrated himself, and begged the Swami's forgiveness for his misconduct. Being of a kindly nature towards his disciples, Sri Raghavendra Tirtha forgave him and gave him his blessings. He seated Srinivasacharyalu by his side. At the time of dinner, Srinivasacharyalu partook unhesitatingly of the pepper water prepared with mustard seed. After the meal was over, he was relieved of the pain in the stomach. His face shone brightly as before. Srinivasacharyalu was filled with joy. He prostrated himself before the Swami and stood quietly with humility. The Swami once again blessed him with sacred grain. Srinivasacharyalu received them with great devotion and returned to Sri Yadavendra Tirtha. He told the Swami how Sri Raghavendra Tirtha had blessed him with kindness. The sacred grain, he showed, were shining red in color. No one should act disparagingly towards great sages who are reservoirs of spiritual powers. It is always beneficial for men to walk in their footsteps. On one occasion, 3 astrologers from Kerala came to Sri Raghavendra Tirtharu. They bowed to the Swami and spoke of their proficiency in astrology. The Swami gave them each a copy of his horoscope and asked them to examine it separately by sitting in 3 different rooms. As ordered, they sat in 3 rooms, examining the horoscope and began to note down their findings. The 3 learned astrologers gave almost the same impression, except in reading the duration of the Swami's life on earth. They placed the readings before the Swami. He asked the 3 scholars of his mutt to examine the writings of the astrologers. The scholars said to the Swami, "O Swami, the 3 scholars have given their predictions precisely, but in the matter of longevity of life, they have erred. One has predicted 100 years, another 300, and the third 700. The 100 years predicted by one astrologer is credible, but the verdicts of the other 2 are not. It is against the customs of the world." Thereupon, Sri Raghavendra, who was omniscient in his powers, said to the scholar, "Gentlemen, the writings of all the 3 astrologers are true. Do you wish to know how? The 3 versions are to be coordinated in this manner. The longevity of the physical body is 100 years. The book of my authorship will live for 300 years. I shall live in the Vrindavana in Samadhi state for 700 years. That means I shall live for 100 years. My works will have potency for 300 years and will fulfill the desires of all those who read them daily with faith and reverence. I shall abide in the Vrindavana in Yoganishta for 700 years and fulfill the desires of the devotees." This is the subtle interpretation of the divergent statements of the astrologers. The astrologers have calculated his lifespan as 300 and 700 years, but they could not reconcile with facts. But the Swami explained the relationship with facts, and all scholars were extremely happy. At another time, 3 Brahmins from North India came to Kumbhakonam to test his wisdom and powers. They did not tell anyone what kind of food should be cooked for them, thinking that the Swami would know their minds. One wished for tamarind rice, another milk rice, and the third rice to eat modakas. That's a favorite offering to Ganesha. They went to the river to take their bath. In the meantime, one of the Swami's disciples came to wash the Swami's clothes. Squeezing the clothes, he saw the Brahmins and said to them, "The dishes you wished for have been prepared in the mutt. Finish your bath early and come for the feast." The Brahmins were astonished at these words. In a few minutes, the Swami's disciple kept one of the clothes on a stone and went to bath. The Brahmins asked him, "How did you know our desires?" Hearing their words, he replied, "Who are you? What are your desires? How could I know them? I did not speak to you to know them." The Brahmins were puzzled. After finishing his bath, he took the Swami's clothes and said to them, "O Brahmins, finish your bath quickly and come, it is time for meal. The dishes you wished for are already ready." So, saying, the disciple went away. The astonishment of the Brahmins were boundless. They began to think among themselves, when the disciples carrying the Swami's clothes, he invited us to dinner. When he kept them down, he denied any knowledge of us or of our desire. Again, when he took them and started to go, he invited us to come and said he knew our desires. This shows that gained knowledge when he was in possession of Swami's clothes by their mysterious power. If the Swami's clothes have such miraculous power, what will be the powers of the Swamiji himself? We have blundered in aiming at testing his powers. It is better we go away after the bath without seeing the Swamiji. But one of them suggested it is not wise to go away without seeing the Swami and receiving tirtha and prasada from him. The other two agreed, and the three Brahmins went to the Swami, prostrated themselves before him, received the tirtha, and proceeded to the dining hall. The three dishes desired by them were served to them stuntlessly, and the servant asked them to have their fill. After a hearty meal, they went to the Swami and begged for the sacred grain and blessings, that is mantrakshati. Smiling, the Swami asked them, "Have you partaken of your favorite dishes to your heart's content? Choose the kind of reward that people who wish to test me should have. I shall give it." On hearing these words, the Brahmins hung their heads and begged the Swami to pardon them for their folly. The Swami pardoned them and said, "You have tested my powers. So in future, be born as Brahmins. Perform worship at my shrine of Vrindavana and eat in the mutt what you like most." He blessed the Brahmins in these words. The descendants of these Brahmins alone are performing worship at the shrine of the Vrindavana in Mantralaya even to this day. The greatness of Raghavendra Tirtha is indescribable. On one occasion, the ruler of Tanjavur sent the Swami an offering of diamond necklace. The Swami was at that time busy performing Vyasvadevam, a kind of homa with cooked rice. So the Swami gave it as Nevidya to Yagneshwara. The people at the palace were astonished at this. Learning of his through hearsay, the king was angry and grieved that a necklace worth thousands of rupees were consigned to the fire. 2 or 3 days later, the ruler visited the Swami and said, "O Swami, I sent you a diamond necklace. I think you would have used it as an ornament to God. I want it now for some purpose. I wish to make another necklace of the same fashion. Please give it to me. I shall return it again." The Swami at once prayed to Yagna Narayana, the Lord of sacrifices. The god of fire appeared before him and gave him the necklace. The Swami received it and gave it to the king. The king, who witnessed to the greatness of the Swami, was filled with wonder. Thinking that he had sinned against the Swami, the king prostrated himself before him and begged his pardon. The Swami was manifestation of mercy. He readily pardoned the king and blessed him. Sri Raghavendra Tirtha carried on his work at Kumbhakona. According to the Mutt tradition, worshipping the deity Sri Moola Ramachandra and instructing his pupils at that time, Sri Vijayaraghava, son of Raghunath Rao, came to the Gaddi. During his reign, there was a terrible famine. Vijayaraghava made many efforts to put an end to the famine conditions, but he could not succeed. At last he came to Sri Raghavendra Tirtharu at Kumbhakonam, prostrated himself before him and said, "A famine has come over my kingdom. The people are suffering much. Be kind enough and put an end to the famine. Be merciful." The Swami remembered the great devotion and regard which his father Raghunath Rao had shown towards him. He took pity on Vijayaraghava and said, "Yes, I shall come to Tanjavur." The Swami visited Tanjavur. He covered the king's palace into a hall of worship, worshipped Sri Moola Ramachandra and prayed, "God, protect the kingdom from the evils of famine." Sri Moola Ramachandra had great grace for the Swami. It looked as if the deity had answered the Swami's prayer. The same day, there was a heavy downpour of rain throughout the kingdom. All the tanks and wells were full to the brim with water. The land became once again green with fresh crops. Vijayaraghava praised the greatness of the Swami in many ways. He gave many rewards to the Swami and gave him a respectful send-off. That year, the produce was plentiful and the country became prosperous. The Swami's greatness was unrivaled. Some days later, once the Swami was teaching his pupils, he suddenly rose up, looked up and asked something and sat down again. The disciples were perplexed. They said to the Swami, "What is it? Kindly explain to us." The Swami said to them, "The great sages Krishna Dvaipayana was riding in a chariot and proceeding to Vaikunta. On the way, he appeared before my vision. I bowed to him and asked him, 'How long yet I am to endure in this physical frame?' By way of answer, he showed 2 fingers and waved them thrice. I understood his purport and bowed and sat down. I shall live from now on only for 2 years, 2 months and 2 days. Then I shall enter the Vrindavana." The disciples had great devotion for and faith in their Guru. They grieved to think that their Guru would depart from them soon. They were pained beyond words. After some days, the Swami came to Adoni on his tours. The Divan Venkana, who was blessed by the Swami, prostrated himself before the Swami and took him home to the accompaniment of auspicious music. He prepared himself to entertain the Swami in a grand manner. He narrated to the Nawab, Siddhi Masood Khan, the mysterious powers of the Swami. He appealed to the Nawab to see the Swami without fail. Siddhi Masood Khan thought to himself, "I shall see what powers this Brahmin priest has." As the Swami completed the worship of Sri Moola Ramachandra and was about to offer Nevidya, the Nawab had a salver covered with a cloth brought by a servant and placed it before the Swami. He did so in order to test the supernatural powers of the Swami. Divan Venkana was not aware of the Nawab's intention. The Swami scented the Nawab's wicked plan. Immediately he spelt out a prayer to Sri Moola Ramachandra and spilt some drops of water from his kamandala, that is drinking vessel, on the salver covered with a cloth. He asked the Nawab to order the cloth to be removed. When the Nawab had the cloth removed from the salver, it was full of fruits and rose flowers. The Nawab was amazed. He realized how great the powers of the Swami. He regretted his own conduct towards the Swami. He wished to make recompense for the sin he had committed. He called Divan Venkana and said to him, "Venkana, your Guru is a great man of rare powers. I wish to grant him some jagirs, group of villages, free of rent. I am ready to carry out any bidding of his. Go to your Guru and inform him of my intention." Divan Venkana went to the Swami and conveyed to him the Nawab's intention. To this, the Swami replied, "Why do we, who have renounced all worldly ties, need any jagirs? But as you say that the Nawab is insistent, let him give me only one village named Manchala on the banks of the Tungabhadra." The village of Manchala, which the Swami had asked for, had already been given to a fakir as a gift, but the Nawab exchanged it for another village and gifted it to the Swami. It was the place sanctified by the performance of a yajna by Bhakta Prahlada. That was why the Swami had asked for the village. The Nawab gave the Swami many presents, bowed to him and took his leave. The time of Sri Raghavendra entering the Samadhi at the Vrindavana approached. The devotees became aware of it. Hundreds of people came to see the Swami and were blessed by him. The Swami sent for Divan Venkana and asked him to build a beautiful Vrindavan. He laid out the beautiful Vrindavan. The devotees were filled with grief because the Swami's end was nearing. Venkana informed the Swami of the completion of the Vrindavana. At once the Swami said to him, "Venkana, this Vrindavana will be useful to another great saint. There's a big rock in the village of Madavaram. Make a Vrindavana with its help." Venkana could not understand the reason for such an order. So he said to the Swami, "Swami, you have asked me to take a Vrindavana by using the rock in the village of Madavaram. Kindly tell me if there is any special reason for it." The Swami replied, Venkana, Sri Ramachandra, while traversing the forest, sat on the stone for 7 gadiyas. The stone is sanctified by the contact of his holy feet and has to be worshipped for 700 years. That is why I ask you to use it for making the Vrindavana. So saying, he cleared the doubts that has troubled Venkana's mind. Venkana made the Vrindavana as ordered by the Swami. Various scholars, poets and musicians came to see the sight of Swami entering the Vrindavana alive. On Thursday, the second day of the bright fortnight, in the month of Sravana, in the year Virodhikrit, the great saint Sri Raghavendra Tirtha entered the Samadhi in the Vrindavana alive. The event was marked by great festivity. As ordered by the Swami, they kept 700 saligramas, that is, natural manifestations of God, in the Vrindavana and covered it with a large stone. An image of Sri Anjaneya was made out of the remaining stone and consecrated at a place in front of the Vrindavana. Even to this day, worship is offered with Vedic rituals to the Vrindavana as well as to the image of Sri Anjaneya. Among the disciples of Sri Raghavendra Swamy, Appannacharya was most notable. The Swami had sent him to another village on some business. He was therefore not present at the event of Swami's entering into the Vrindavana. On his return journey, he heard the news of Sri Raghavendra's entry into the Vrindavana. Regretting that he could not have the last glimpse of his Guru, he ran to the place praising Sri Raghavendra Swamy. As he neared the Vrindavana, the shloka in the praise of Swami was incomplete with the words Vibhita. Instantly, Sri Raghavendra Swamy, who is well known for his affection for his disciples, completed the verse with the words Sakshi Haya Shotrihi. Even to this day, this panegyric of Sri Raghavendra Swamy written by Appannacharya is recited by scholars and laymen. This verse, beginning with the words Sri Purna Bodha Guru Tirtha Payodipara, if recited 108 times, will help a person to get his desires fulfilled. All baneful conditions will disappear. All sins will be recompensed. This need not be mentioned separately. These effects of worshipping at the Vrindavana are known to the devotees by their own experience. It is mentioned that Sri Raghavendra had himself announced to the devotees from the Vrindavana, the Lord Haigriva will himself be witness to the efficacy of this sloka in his praise. Sri Appannacharya has written the Sri Raghavendra Mangalashtakam in addition to Sri Raghavendra Stotram, for which people are much indebted to him. Among the successors to the Sri Raghavendra Guru Pitha, Sri Vadendra Tirtha is one. He was a great poet. He was a great poet. He knew quite intimately the miraculous powers and spiritual excellence of Sri Raghavendra Tirtharu. He composed the Guru Guna Suti, delineating the greatness and versatility of Sri Raghavendra Swamy. Sri Vadendra stood before the Sri Raghavendra Vrindavana and recited melodiously the words of Guru Guna Stuti. The Vrindavana, it seems, shook to signify Sri Raghavendra Guru Sarvabhauma appreciation of those verses. How fortunate Sri Vadendra Tirtha was. Om Moola Rama Vijayate, pūjyāya rāghaveṃdrāya, satyadharmaratāya, bhajatāṃ kalpavṛkṣāya, namatāṃ kāmadhenave. Om Sri Krishnarpanamastu.